I've enjoyed my time in Washington the first 100 days. The most difficult part is being away from my family, traveling and leaving my wife and my two sons, 18 and 15-year-old, at home. But I've enjoyed my time in D.C. I feel like that the time that I spent as a prosecutor, that I've been able to take that experience serving the people of Rankin and Madison County. Now I have the ability to serve the people of not just the 3rd Congressional District, but the entire state. We've had the opportunity to work with the Trump administration as we seek to try to find solutions to the crisis that exist on our southwest border. As a member of the Homeland Security Committee, I've had the opportunity to question the Secretary of Homeland Security, in which she told us that we had an immigration crisis, a human trafficking crisis, and a drug trafficking crisis that existed along our southwest border. In addition to that, I voted on 2 occasions against bills I thought that would limit our Second Amendment rights to possess firearms. Both of those bills would have placed undue restrictions upon individual law-abiding citizens to both purchase and sell firearms. And I've also voted to see that our elections are run by our state and local officials. There was a bill introduced that would have allowed our federal government to come in and take over our election process. And I feel like the best government is government that is local. And I believe that our elections should be run by our state officials, should be run by our local officials, and should not be run by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. Well, of course, immigration is front and center as we continue to see the number of immigrants coming across our border swell each and every day. I will tell you that the Republicans and Democrats have very different ideas upon how that issue should be resolved. Being a member of the Homeland Security Subcommittee, that's something that we have held multiple hearings on. I believe that what we're seeing cries out for the need of comprehensive immigration reform. We need to be able to secure our borders. We need to be able to modernize our immigration laws. We need to look to see what we can do to end things such as chain migration, to end things such as a lottery system. We need to have a merit-based system. I believe what that also goes with modernizing and also expanding programs such as our H-2A visa program, H-2B visa program, that allows individuals to come into our country for the purpose of doing seasonal, temporary work in which there are jobs in which that labor pool is needed. Another issue, and an issue that I hope that we're able to find bipartisan support for and actually get a bill through this Congress, transportation infrastructure. I think throughout our country we see aging infrastructure, roads, bridges, water, sewage. I think that individuals on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, that this is an issue that we can work together to try to see that the federal government can partner with our state and local government officials to try to provide some of the vital, necessary funding to fund some of the projects that we need. I believe, and what I would hope, is that any funding that comes down from our federal government would come down to our state officials and local officials, and let them decide how that money needs to be spent. Let them decide what projects need to be prioritized, the matching that would go along with that. I'm not a big believer in a one-size-fits-all model. I believe that what may work in California, may work in New York, would not work or would not work well in Mississippi. So I'm hopeful that after the second 100 days that we're talking about the fact that we've made great progress on a bipartisan bill that would work toward fixing our aging infrastructure. Well, I know one thing that Republicans are pushing very hard in Washington is to stop infanticide, where you have individuals who are born alive outside the womb of the mother, and then those children are then left to die. I believe in the sanctity of life. As a prosecutor, I have prosecuted people for taking human life. And I believe that once a child is born, that child has just as much of a right to live as any of us. And so there has been a discharge petition that has been introduced by Steve Scalise. That petition would require a vote on the attempt to stop infanticide on the House floor. We've not yet reached the necessary vote threshold to require a discussion and vote on the House floor, but that is something that we're working each and every day on. You know, what I can say is that while in Washington during these first 100 days, I've been able to make a great many friendships on both sides of the aisle, both Democrat and Republican. Of course, have made a concerted effort to become very close to the other members of the Mississippi delegation, Trent Kelly and Stephen Palazzo, and also Congressman Thompson. Congressman Thompson and I both serve on Homeland Security. He is the chairman of that committee, and so I have spent time in Congressman Thompson's office as we have had discussions, personal discussions about our children, our grandchildren, our hobbies, but also discussions about how we can seek to move Mississippi forward. I've made some great friends with some incoming freshman members of Congress, particularly on the Republican side. Right down the hall from me in Cannon is Greg Pence. Greg is the older brother of Vice President Mike Pence. He is recently elected out of the state of Indiana. He and I both serve on Foreign Affairs Committee together, and we have developed a friendship. Also on that same hall is Ross Spagno, who is an incoming freshman from Florida. Ross and I have also become close friends, and we actually are in a Wednesday night Bible study together. And so that's one thing about being up in Washington is you can develop friendships. And again, those friendships being across the aisle. There are several members of the Democratic Party that I have begun to know and begun building relationships with. And I believe long term, if we're going to seek to move our country forward, if we're going to seek to pass legislation that will address many of the issues we're facing today, is going to require that bipartisanship.